Hey guys, Dean here, back again. So my last video was a vinyl throwback video, which essentially wasn't so much of a throwback as a trip down memory lane. And I sort of really enjoyed making that one. And I did mention at the end of that video that there was another record store that was quite important in certainly where I'm at the moment, as far as record collecting, music and so forth. So I thought I'd do the video while it's fresh in my memory. So the record shop in question was the Record Cellar in Gainsborough. Now this was by no means a large record shop. I mean, the record shop I mentioned in my previous video, Signals, was big. This record store, imagine your living room, front room, whatever you want to call it. It was probably around the same size as this room. Literally walk in off the street, through the door, squeeze past the person that was probably perusing through the records. There was one centre cabinet console area, so there was loads of record shelving there in the middle, and then there was some against the wall at the side, by the shop window itself, and then there were, I think, a rack of CDs and so forth. Anyway, so the amount of vinyl in stock was probably, I mean, I dare say probably less than 1,000 records. But that wasn't the point. The whole idea of Record Cellar was the customer service. So I mean, if you walked in off the street, you could definitely find your top 40 singles and albums, either on vinyl or CD at that time. So we're talking 86, 87 time when I first started going to that record shop. And primarily it was run by a chap called Jonathan. Now he was probably around 4 years older than me at the time, so he was in college at the time I was just about to finish school. His mother owned the record store, so he used to work in there on afternoons when he wasn't at college, weekends and so forth. Anyway, so obviously I used to go in on a Saturday, we'd still been at school, occasional sort of after school trips, but mainly on a Saturday. I used to go in there and I used to chat. He was, to me, as a would have been probably 14, 15-year-old lad, into music at the time, wasn't quite sure which direction I was going with the music. I was listening to a fair amount of pop stuff at the time, dipping my toes into sort of rock, metal sort of side of things. I had found Signals by this point, so I was going down the metal path. Potentially at that point, I think I did hit both of those record stores around the same sort of time, so they both petered my interest at the same time. So at this point, certainly Signals was catering for my metal stuff, because I could literally walk in and pick it out there and then. This store, however, certainly catered for the pop and, you know, the more mainstream market. Had a few bits of metal and so forth, and a few other obscure things here and there. But for the most part, you would order your stuff in. So if you wanted Halloween's latest album, it would not be on the shelves. So you go in and say, "Can I order this, please?" And you know, they would order it in for you. Their contacts were pretty good. The distributor that they used, pretty had most things. If you're on a major label, then you've got it. If you didn't, then you're pretty much out of luck. Whereas Signals catered for not only the major labels like Noise and so forth, but also for like the smaller labels and private presses. Bands would drop their stuff off there and so forth. That didn't really happen at Record Cellar. But the main reason why this was important to me was Jonathan, essentially. And I have mentioned to you guys before, this chap, he was influential in a lot of ways for me. Mainly, I think, having that sort of elder peer in my life. I didn't really had older brothers, but they'd since moved away from home. I had 2 younger brothers, but they weren't particularly into the same sort of music scene as I was, and obviously they were younger, so Didn't really take any notice. But yeah, Jonathan, he was a massive Beatles fan initially. So he knew pretty much everything there was to know about the Beatles. The key thing for me though was he was a big McCartney fan. Now I was aware of the Beatles, obviously like most people, my parents had a decent sized Beatles collection. I had a few Beatles albums in my collection, as most people probably do, Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper, that sort of thing. But Paul McCartney, obviously, other than being in the Beatles, I hadn't knowingly heard any of his solo stuff. So Jonathan really got me into that side of things. Introduced me to a few of his albums, solo albums and so forth anyway. And the one that really stuck was this one, the Flowers in the Dirt. This was out in '89. So it would have introduced me to this, well, I'd have been after school, so I'd left school in '88. But by then I was quite a big McCartney fan. I'd gone back through his back catalogue, and we'd gone through and listened to other bands that influenced McCartney during his solo career. We'd obviously gone down the path of other McCartney projects like Wings and so forth. But for some reason, certainly on the McCartney vibe, this album, Flowers in the Dirt, struck me big. I think I'd already been into Elvis Costello by this point as well. I think he was one of the artists that he put me onto, so I'd listened to a lot of Elvis Costello and the Attraction and stuff early doors, and I think his collaboration with Elvis on this led me to probably having a bigger appreciation of this than any other McCartney album. So yeah, so as far as that goes, music-wise and stuff, and he put me onto people like Springsteen and so forth, who I never in a million years would have been interested in Bruce Springsteen, I don't think. I'd heard sort of Born to Run and so forth, and, but can't say I was particularly interested in that side of things. I think it was The River that he first put me onto. So if you don't like Born to Run, you know, the big sort of heavy hitters, as it were, that were in the charts at the time, listen to The River. It's a different take, it's a different Springsteen, so see how you go with that. And I loved it, and again, so started delving into Springsteen's back catalogue a bit more. But yeah, so musically, that's where my knowledge was coming from. I tried the reverse. I sort of tried getting him into a bit more on the metal side of things. And I know we had conversations about Led Zeppelin, Kiss, Iron Maiden are brought up as well. He was just nearing the end of his sort of college time, and going on to university, so he's about to move away. He got a local column in the newspaper where he was reviewing albums and so forth. And one of the albums I essentially forced him to review, I said he should have reviewed Iron Maiden's Seventh Son, because I think he'd loved that album. It was the only way I could get him to listen to the more metal side of things. He was sticking by his guns and the stuff that he knew, which was fine. So he actually listened to the new album, well, the follow-up to Seventh Son, which obviously was No Prayer for the Dying, which was a different album by Maiden. Again, it's a lot of Maiden fans sit on the fence about this one. I myself really like it. Sort of, certainly on the tour, they sort of just took away all the big production and sort of went back to amps, jeans, t-shirt, guitar type thing, which worked for them. The only downside to this is the production lets it down a bit. I think the writing on this isn't too bad. I think Bruce Dickinson sort of almost took a back step on a few of these things, but I think he was wanting to go in a different direction, but maybe Steve Harris wasn't. But yeah, I mean, there's Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, which was the #1 single in the UK, which is by no means one of my favourite tracks. I think Bruce's solo version is far better. But anyway, I digress. This isn't a review of this album. Just while I'm here, so we've got the Picture Disc version, and we've got the US red vinyl version on the Epic label, still sealed. That one I've not opened it up. But yeah, also at the time there were other stuff that I was picking up. Like I say, I was trying to get into the metal side of things. So in '88, when Seventh Son came out, picked up Queensryche Operation Mindcrime, which is a superb album. Probably technically better than Seventh Son. As an album for me personally, I prefer Seventh Son, not just because it's Iron Maiden. I think it just sort of gives you a flow, a better flow of different styles almost. It's a bit more bombastic. Queensryche, this is pretty much in the vein of Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. It's almost linear. It's fantastic, don't get me wrong. It's a cracking album, and I still think this is one of Queensryche's, if not Queensryche's best. But yeah, so I picked up that there, and Whitesnake as well. Got into them quite heavily in 1987. Obviously, this was the album around the time. They remember the other day, I think it was Miko in the Vinyl Corner, had this in his vinyl tag, and commented it was the best album. Sorry, the Still of the Night was the best track Led Zeppelin never made, which completely took me back to school, 1987, where we were playing that during our lunch break in the maths teacher's classroom before maths started. And our maths teacher came in and said, "What are you guys listening to Led Zeppelin for?" And at that time we didn't particularly know who Led Zeppelin were. We were saying, "No, it's Whitesnake, so it's Whitesnake." So no, that's definitely Led Zeppelin. I said, "No, it's definitely Whitesnake," showing him the album as it were. And yeah, that just made me laugh when Miko said that, so it just took me straight back. So yeah, anyway, record seller. So for me, obviously Jonathan moved on. I think he went down south somewhere. I can't quite remember. I think it was Bridlington, Bournemouth sort of area. Went to university, I think. Then later, I think got a journalist role down there. The record seller carried on, I think probably for about another year or so, and then sadly closed. So we was pretty much left with no independent record store in Gainsborough, which is where the shop was located, if I haven't mentioned already. So yeah, so that's why. I mean, there were so many other records that I bought from there, which but he was a key part of my musical influences to this day. I still listen to Paul McCartney, still listen to the Beatles, I still listen to Springsteen, I still listen to a lot of other stuff that he put me on to, like the Doors and the Kinks and so forth. So thank you, Jonathan, for your influence in my musical side of things. You'll be disheartened to know I'm still listening to Iron Maiden, and metal and all things along those lines, but I feel that I'm a better rounded person musically because of Jonathan at the record seller. Thank you very much, guys. Until next time.